To come forward to this next session, please. Oh, there you go.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason. So I'm the Director of Transportation for Home Hardware, member of the PMTC, MacDonald-Dannecker, Generation Z, who they are, factors of who they are, and how we can best support them to ensure we can support them in our industry. Hannah is the Sales Marketing Manager and partner at Better Together Group. She's spent the beginning of her career dedicating herself to helping bridge the barriers between the working world and those that want to be in it. Whether she's talking to Generation Z about how to find a role of their dreams, or talking with previous working generations about how to best recruit and retain the next generation, she loves talking about all things hiring. Growing up in the transportation industry and moving to the US to take her family's business over the border, Hannah has a passion for supporting the hire of drivers, labor, permanent placements alike. As an author of Well, the Employee Manual and a Hiring Guide, plus the cost of the podcast called Workish found on Spotify, she loves creating content which is meant to support these efforts of bridging the barriers. Please welcome Hannah.
Is there something? Oh no, there it is. All right. I am so excited to be here with all of you today. Thank you for making it this morning and sticking it out. It looks like this half of the room did well at drinking their water last night, and this half of the room has slowly creeped in a little bit later. No, I'm really excited to be here today. It's a great event. This is my first time here, and I've really just been loving it. It's quite an experience to be surrounded in this room of people with transportation specialists. Today, we're going to talk about Generation Z. And I've started this presentation off in a couple different ways. But today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to ask everybody to take their phone out and put it above their head. Okay, now what I want you to do with that is be silent and put it away in your pockets. And this is important for me to ask you to do this, not necessarily as important for you to do it, but we're going to get to the importance of that in a couple of minutes. So Generation Z. 1 second. The PowerPoint is loading. Who is Gen Z? They're the Centennials, the Zoomers, the Rainbow Generation, the Solo Generation. Yes, Mike? They don't have it. Well, that is going to be really unfortunate. I do not know, not with me. You're going to check the backup. Okay, well, we'll roll through this together, but this is a very, very PowerPoint-led conversation, so that'll be important. But I have faith that they'll figure it out. So, Generation Z, Mike, if you remember, I emailed it to you. That might be a better place to find it. The Centennials, the Zoomers, the Rainbow Generation, you've got it. Thank goodness. Yay! Who are they? Where do they come from? They are born between the years of 1997 and 2012. There's 72 million of them in this world, and I am so proud to be one of them. But as a group, you might have experienced them in some different ways. Maybe you've seen them from a distance, right? You're looking at me right now, you're like, I don't really get it. I don't understand. I don't really know what we're here to talk about. Maybe you've worked with some and you're struggling to understand them because they say words in meetings and you're just like, that's not in the dictionary. That doesn't make any sense. What are we doing here? Maybe that's not your experience. Maybe you haven't worked with them or partnered with them, but you're in fact a parent to a Generation Z, and you're desperately trying to understand who they are and what they're doing. Are we ready? 2 seconds. All right. Appreciate that. That's great. So, if you're looking at the Gen Zs around you, and you're wondering what's going on, you've come to the right place. But the first thing I want to talk about is a perspective, because I'm going to have a very different perspective on this generation than all of you. I recently moved, and my husband and I, when we talk about our old view, we would sit outside every single day and share a tea together. So sitting on our back patio overlooking downtown Orlando, and I tell people when I looked at our view, I could see the iDrive with the massive wheel, I could see the entertainment location, I could see the fireworks from Disney. And when he talks about it, he talks about seeing Lake Eola, this lake that's downtown. He talks about the sky rises and seeing the highway and the horizon behind us. Because I always sit in the right seat and I look at him facing the left. And he always sits in the left seat facing me, looking at the right. So we come at different things from very different perspectives. And that's gonna be what happens today between me and all of you. You're gonna come at this with a really different perspective because we grew up very differently. But I just ask that you come at it open-minded to try and hear a little bit about how we can really connect with this generation. Now here's the part that it gets a little more important because here's the part where my game is supposed to start. But it looks like we're not quite there. So I'll skip it, I'll tell my story, and we'll come back to the game. There was one day, about 5 years ago, that I was sitting in my car, driving down the highway. And 2 years prior to this, I had been a university student. I had been in my education. I went to a school, brick and mortar, and I hated it. It was really bad, wasn't for me. So I transferred to their online program and I moved back into my parents' basement and I worked 3 jobs and I worked and saved as much money as I possibly could. And I was like, yes, what am I gonna do with all of this now? I'm probably gonna move to Florida. So what I did was I randomly went online and I found some people that I had never met and I connected with them and I was like, hey, this is exciting. I was like, hey, I want to move. Do you have a spot for me? Do you think I could come? Do you think I could live there? And they said, yes, come on down. So I moved in with a person that I had never met before in my life. And I continued to work. I got a job as a substitute teacher and I loved it. Working with high school students, my gosh, the energy, it's incredible. I fell in love with being there. I started to compete in wakeboarding and I got pretty good at it. Not to toot my own horn, but I took a 2nd place at a world championship, so I wasn't bad. And then the global pandemic hit. And I was like, I'm just about to graduate. Oh, phenomenal, this is the one. So exciting. So I was like, I'm just about to graduate. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna try and get a full-time job. But if I'm gonna try and get a full-time job in the United States of America, I'm gonna be looking at what? 2 weeks of vacation in my 2nd year, 1 week borrowed back into my 1st year. And I would be trying to travel to Canada, where I'd be looking at doing a 14-day quarantine every time I crossed the border to try and see my family. So I was at a deadlock, right? I had really not great options sitting in front of me. I could give up everything I had possibly worked for and move back to Canada to a great situation, or I could not see my family. Well, that wasn't gonna work for me. So I moved back, chose an offer that my father gave me that I couldn't refuse. It was fantastic. I moved into a house, had my first apartment all by myself. First female in my entire lineage to live alone. That was pretty cool for me. I had a great full-time job, a phenomenal car. I loved my life, but you know, one day I was driving down that highway, commuting into work, bawling my eyes out. I was so upset at this life that was in front of me because I had worked so hard for this other thing and it had been ripped away from me. And I looked over at my glove box and I was like, my passport is in that glove box. And I could just drive to the border. I could not look back. I could just tell my family that I'm sorry, that I couldn't do it, that I couldn't be a part of the family business anymore, that I wasn't strong enough. But I didn't. I stopped the car and I got out and I went to work. But I did it because my last name was on that door. So why are your Gen Zs coming back to work for you if they're not your children? Well, before we finish that story, we're gonna play this game. In 2025, what percent of the workforce is gonna be Generation Z? Let's get a guess from the audience. What do you think?
27.
Phenomenal guess. You are absolutely correct. So in just a couple of months, 27% of this room should be Generation Z, right? How many hours a week does Generation Z spend on their phone? Let's get another guess. Mr. Waterboy, what do you think? 55. Just about, it's 45. So just about what everybody in a normal job, I mean, we're in logistics, so y'all are working 60 hours a week, I understand that. But a normal person in a normal job is spending the same amount of time on their phone as Gen Zs are. What percent of Gen Z says that technology affects their decision to work for a company? We started talking about this yesterday, and they told you to come back today. This is what we're going to talk about. Let's get a guess. Bruce? 65%. 91% of Generation Z says that it's going to affect their decision to work there. What percent of Gen Z says that there's a better way to get an education than a post-secondary degree? We were also talking a little bit about this yesterday. Let's get one more guess. What do you think? 64. It is 73. That's a high percent. 73% of them think there's a better way to do it. I wonder why. We'll learn this. What percent of Gen Z is sexually fluid? I'm not going to have any of you guess this one. I'm just going to tell you the answer. But it's 48%, and this will be important, and I'll tell you why in a little while. What percent of Gen Z says that they care about their own longevity at a company? Actually, I'm going to get another guess. Mike, what do you think it is? 72. 90% of Generation Z says that they care about the longevity at a company, but maybe they're just blowing smoke and mirrors, right? So what percent of those Gen Z say that they actually want to stay at their current company? Let's get one more guess. What do you think? Yeah. You are correct. You've been working with students. You understand. So we're going to keep this story time moving forward. Fast forward another couple of years. I'm back sitting in a car. It's a different car now, right? Because I got out and I got a promotion and I got a better car. Good for me. It's very exciting. Driving down the highway in Orlando, Florida. Notice there's a difference. I'm no longer in Ontario. Some things have changed. And somebody in our organization from the senior leadership team had just decided to step out. And as an ownership group, we were choosing what we were going to be doing. And I had just left a conversation with my entire family where we were like, okay, it's all us. This is you and me. This is what we're doing. It's all you and me. This guy right here in the middle. So I was excited. I was ready. But it was so different. And I was kind of phased out, you know, rolling down this highway, and this song comes on the radio through my playlist, and it's Bop to the Top. You know, bop to the top, won't ever stop, whap away up, from the High School Musical song. And what she's saying in this moment, it brought me out of this trance, was that you need to rise to the occasion, you need to step up. And I had another tear come down my face. But it wasn't because I was scared. It wasn't because I was overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do. It wasn't because I wanted to bail. It was because I was so excited about what we were doing, not only as a family, not only as an executive team, but as a company, in our own company and in our community around us. What we were doing did not change, you know? Our jobs did not change. But our culture, our community, the things that we were doing to do the things that we were doing, that is what changed. And because it did, I was able to move to the US. I was able to bring our company across the border and start staffing for people all across America. I was able to start speaking on stages like this, connecting with all of you. But it wouldn't happen if my father, the owner of our company, didn't say, okay, I will listen and we're gonna work through this together. And that's why that perspective shift is so important. And so we tested it, you know, we brought a bunch of Gen Zs in. We did a phenomenal program. We're still doing it to this day. Some of our Gen Zs are in this room. Shout out Lauren. And you know, 90% of them finished their first term. I'm showing this to you so you're not like, okay, this isn't just random. 90% of them finished their first term. Not all of them, not everyone succeeds. You all know logistics is not for the weak of heart. And then 70% of them were like, hey, this was really good. We're gonna come back. We're gonna do more. And then 25% of them were like, you know what? I love this place. We're coming back again. And every single person who came back for their third semester was offered a job and hired on full time. So what makes them Gen Z? Remember when I told you to put those phones in your pockets? That was really important, not so that you actually did it, but that you felt the feeling of somebody who knows nothing about you, telling you to do something, giving you a direction, giving you an order. And I have no place to be doing that. I mean, this room, the first thing that you should have thought was, you don't understand, I need this. Because you're busy people, you're professionals, you have things to do, and I don't want to discredit that. But the important part here is that we first take a moment to understand before we start to direct. So what makes them who they are? Technology. We all saw and giggled that 45 hours a week is what they're doing on their phones. Nuts. And then 91% of them are saying that technology is affecting their decision to work for a company. Now, technology is a little funny, right? Because for most people in this room, it's deemed as a tool that you're using to do the things that you need to do. But for Generation Z, it's almost deemed as an extension of their body. You know, I left my phone back there, and honestly, it's making me a little uncomfortable. I like to have it in my hand. I don't know about all of you, but it kind of becomes a part of me. It becomes a part of my memories, becomes a part of my storage, my calendar, my contacts. My gosh, if I could remember all of the contacts in my phone off the top of my head, I'd be the best salesperson in the world. But I can't do that. I need that because it's a tool for a lot of you, but it's a part of me. And it's a part of most of the Gen Zs. And so what does that mean for technology? What do you need? Well, we talked a little bit about gamification yesterday. I think that's the correct term for it. The concept that Duolingo has done so well at making everything that's educational and important really fun. And that's great, but that's not actually what I want to touch on. I want you to look at the computer you're giving them, in the phone that you're passing them. Is it 10 years old? Is it outdated? What about the software that's inside of it? Because if your Gen Z's brains are working faster than the technology and faster than the fingertips that they're using to maneuver it, it's gonna make them very mad. So yes, you wanna make sure that your technology is doing well, but let's just start with the basics, Let's start with that. But we're here because we want to recruit them. And a lot of you might be sitting there thinking, okay, so you're going to tell me all of this, but I don't even know that I want them. So let me explain to you why some of this is beneficial for you. There is a new knowledge that is coming from an entire generation. Every single Gen Z knows how to use technology. As an entire generation, they're coming into a workforce with a skill, and that has never happened before, that they have shared it. They are going to be predisposed to adopt the technology that is, yes, currently in your organization, the CRMs, the ATSs, whatever it may be for you, but they're also going to be predisposed to adopt and help the people around you adopt the technology that you will bring in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years from today. They are also a YouTube DIY generation. When I was 14 years old, just a little kid, one of my best friends was like, Hannah, I know that this is crazy, but I'm gonna build a house. And I was like, a house? You're 14 years old, we're 14, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, but my school, they run this really cool project, it's a senior project, I think I can do it, I'm just gonna try. A tiny house. I can look it all up on YouTube. And she did, and then she lived in it with her husband, her first child, and then they sold it and got a deposit for their first home. Crazy. She just built it in her backyard at the age of 14. So this generation is going to come in with a knowledge of not only to use technology, but to use the technology to do the things that they don't know how to do. And that's pretty exciting for managers all around. Globalization and human cooperation. I have this really interesting friend, is what I'll call her. Her name is Amanda. She also went to Liberty, the school that I went to, but we were never there at the same time. It's funny, she has this really cute boyfriend and a really cool new rug in her house. It's got these pink and blue flowers on it. It's really cute. I actually haven't spoken to Amanda in 2 or 3 years, but I still know all of this because we're still connected virtually. And should I have the opportunity to be in the same place as her, I would. But what did we do? We met when we were in 6th grade on a cruise. And I would still deem her as one of my friends. So social media has changed the way that people communicate, that humans are communicating, specifically the way that Gen Zs are seeing the concept of relationship, which means that they're going to be outside of the box thinkers, yes. They're going to be great at building your long distance relationships, maintaining that. They're going to be great salespeople, client managers, customer relations, you put your name on it, recruiters, my word, they'll be great. And they'll be able to keep those relationships for a long time, and they'll probably be able to bring them back a decade later. COVID-19, unfortunately, we're still going to talk about this. I hate talking about COVID because I really would like to just move on. But this hit when Generation Z was what I like to call baby adults, right? They were just coming out of high school or just coming out of university. For me, it struck right when I was graduating. I never had a graduation. You know what I did? I called my parents while I was sitting in my pajamas with, like face full of just a sheet mask, whatever it was, the least appealing graduation. And I just FaceTimed them as I submitted my last paper. I was like, yay, we're done. So it's affected Gen Z in some type of way, but what type of way is that? Well, 90% of them say that they care about their longevity at their jobs. And this surprises most people because millennials were often deemed as the people who would hop over to the other side of the grass because it looked a lot greener. But Generation Z grew up in an environment where their parents were going through a recession, and it scared them. And then they became baby adults in the middle of a pandemic, and that was scary. And then they're coming into this who knows what pending recession of we're not going to talk about it. And they can't even pay for their groceries. And so they're going to stay at a company for a lot longer than people have before. 70% of those Gen Zs say that they want to stay at their companies. That's an amazing thing that you can invest in if you can keep them there. But how do you do that? We'll get to that very briefly. I'm going to keep rolling really quickly. They're craving stability. They're incredibly self-motivated. They sat at home by themselves to submit those papers. They increased their time management because they organized their own calendars. But this list, it's got some really good words on it. Oh, I missed this part because we missed the beginning of the presentation. Anyways, this is a list of words that I collected from people when I first started to think about this presentation. I went to a Starbucks, I sat down for 8 hours. I asked every single person that passed me what those words were, the first word that they thought of when they thought of Gen Z. The biggest ones up on here are the ones that I heard regularly, and the smallest ones are the ones that I heard just once or twice. And when you look up here, we've got the pros, but there are also some struggles that they are going to deal with. So how is their management team, as their recruiters, as their support system, how can we help them work through these barriers? They are communicational values, imposter syndrome, flexibility, and educational change. I said that 48% of Gen Zs consider themselves sexually fluid. This specific statistic typically gets a bit of shock value, and that's not actually why I bring it. I bring it to show you that Generation Z is very different from the generations that have walked before them. And sometimes when we're communicating with them, when we're giving them instructions and directions, the words that we're using are getting in the way of the message that we're trying to deliver. So I show you this statistic to ask you to be very intentional about the way that you're communicating with them. Because how unfortunate would it be if a simple joke that you thought was funny got in the way of them doing the best of their abilities at their job, right? We'll move on from that. 91% of Gen Z say that a company's effect on society affects their decision to work there. I'll just let that sit. Imposter syndrome. 70% of 70% of people struggle with this. So people in this room, hypothetically, are supposed to struggle with this. And it's really unfortunate because Generation Z was actually supposed to get over it. They weren't supposed to be stuck with imposter syndrome because of the technology, because they had it sitting in their back pocket for so long. But with COVID, with the way that things have transitioned, they unfortunately are really struggling with it. When I gave this presentation a while ago, I gave it to a great room full of people, and at the very front of the room was a table full of Canada Post people. They all worked at Canada Post, and what I was explaining to them in this slide was that I have not yet sent out my thank you notes for coming to my wedding. I'm really getting close to a year here. Like, I'm cutting it close. And they were giggling, laughing. And I was like, it's embarrassing to me that I don't know how to send a piece of mail, but I don't. And so what did I do? I reached out to my Gen Z interns, and I was like, hey, can you help me with this? And she went online and Googled it, went on YouTube and figured it out. She sent out some pieces of mail internally for some company stuff, and it's encouraged me to go out and send my wedding invites, or my wedding thank you notes. But I just don't know how, because I never had to do it. And that's so funny, but I can get up on stage here. Sending a piece of mail makes me more uncomfortable, though. And how silly. But what a phenomenal thing for all of you to say, hey, there are some really, really basic life things that I can stand beside you and we can do together. How great is that? Like shaking someone's hand. Maybe they don't know how to do that. Going in for an interview, dressing appropriately, not bringing their mom. My gosh. Let's help them. Flexibility. 65% of Generation Z says that working from home made them more connected to their coworkers. How is that possible? You know, my husband and I, we first started dating long distance across a border in the middle of the pandemic. It was lots of fun. But I think because we started that way, we expedited our relationship really quickly. And we got to the spot where we were ready to say I do. Because we were able to sit with one another. Yes, we were able to see each other. It wasn't like I had never met the man. But when we were online, looking at one another on a screen, we were so incredibly intentional about what we were talking about, because what were we gonna do? Just sit there and watch Netflix together? No. We were gonna sit and have really intense conversations about some of the things that were going on in our lives, because that's what the technology was pushing us to do. And so 65% of Gen Z says that working from home made them feel more connected to their coworkers, and we shouldn't be surprised by that because that's the way that they were raised. 78% of them say that flexibility in working hours would have them accepting a job immediately. Not let me go check on that, not let me go send out a couple more resumes, not let me go see if I got an email back from that person that I was really excited to talk to. No, immediately. Let me shake your hand. This is a done deal. That's crazy. That should be used. But flexibility, that term is really flexible, right? Like, I am our sales and marketing manager because I can't just do sales and I can't just do marketing because I love them both and it excites me to do both of them. What if you let somebody once a week come in on a Sunday because they needed extra hours and their term of flexibility was the potential to earn some more money? What if you have somebody who really struggles with a health condition that wakes them up at 4 o'clock in the morning every single morning, and their definition of flexibility was getting to start earlier every day because they're exhausted by the time that 5 o'clock comes around? You know, flexibility is flexible. I understand that we have restrictions as employers that we need to work on, but we can also work through them. Educational change. 73% say that there is a better way to get an education over going to university. But why is this? Millennials were the most educated generation to date. But like I said, they don't even know if they can buy their groceries right now. So they are pretty concerned about accumulating student debt when they don't know if they're ever going to move out of their parents' house. So why would they do that if they have the technology, if they have the information sitting in their back pocket? But what can we do as a team standing around them to support them through this? Because eventually the tables will turn and we're going to be desperate for employees again. Let's look at creating some alternative credibility. Why is it that a welder can't bring in a portfolio of photos and that can't be acceptable rather than, let's say, a specific degree? Let their work stand for them. Now we've gotten here, this is all great and dandy, but now what do we do? We learned a lot about this. It's almost like Kim and I planned it. I want you to mentor over manage them. It's really easy to step into a management position with a Gen Z, to say, hey, I really need you to put your phone away. But if you haven't taken the time to first understand them, to work alongside of them, it's gonna make them a little mad, right? Like, I don't imagine any of you felt great when I told you to do that. And so I want you to mentor over manage them. But what does that look like? That looks like listening to learn, learning to understand, and then understanding to speak. It's really easy to miss that middle step, but it's really important that we don't. I want you to integrate their why. You know, when we were first starting this presentation, I called all of our Gen Z interns, and I was like, hey, why do you do what you do every day? And one of them was like, because you told me to. Yeah, okay, that's fair, I get that. But a couple of them had some really phenomenal answers. I do what I do every day because I create an opportunity for people who are vulnerable to come to a safe place. That's really cool. Are you sure you're 21? I create opportunities for people who can't do it themselves. That's pretty impressive. I help support people when they're at their lowest. I thought you made 50 calls every day. I thought you sent 50 emails every day. And that is what they are doing, but it is not why they are doing it. So you want to integrate their why. Then I want you to invest in them. Bring them to things like this, you know? We've got a couple players in here who are really, really good at that. But not everybody. Invest in them. Maybe that looks like bringing them here. Maybe that looks like a coffee every single Friday at 2 o'clock. Maybe that looks like intentional meetings where you sit down and go through education plans and you talk about what they're missing and how you can help them do it. There's so many ways to invest in them, but I ask you to invest in them. Then I want you to feed them something yummy. I do not doubt that your Generation Zs have a job to do. They come in and there's something that needs to be done, and they are junior, and so I understand you want them to do it. The files need to be filed. The calls need to be called. But why is it that you couldn't just give them a couple hours every single week of something that would make them really excited to get there? You know, it's like dangling a piece of steak. It's really not that complicated. So feed them something yummy. This is when you finally then get to invite them to listen to you. And it's really funny because not many people love this, right? They're like, they should listen to me right now. But with a generation full of people who have literally recreated the term influencer, who have been influenced from every app they open and every door they step into, whether it's their parents, their teachers, their guidance, their students around them, they've built walls up, really, really big walls. And for us to actually influence them, we need to start taking them down. So this is when you get to invite them to listen, but not before. Really, all of this is simply leaving them better than you found them, right? We do this with ourselves. We try to improve ourselves every day. We come to conferences like this. We try to do it with our coworkers around us. Some of that senior management team, they've got education dollars for days, right? You want them to get their master's program. You really want to support them. Your customers, we try to leave them better than we found them. But why is it that we wouldn't try to leave the next generation of people to be sitting in this room better than we found them when we have the opportunity to influence them right now? There are lots of barriers, yes. But I think that as a group, as a team full of HR professionals, it's really easy to help them overcome it. Now I want everybody to make a big stretch. Stand up for me. Everybody stand up. Stretch it out. I know we're tired. It's crazy. I'm asking you to do these insane things. I've got all the different generations up here. If you're a boomer, I'm going to ask you to take a seat for me. Okay. Now if you're a Gen X, sit down. If you're a millennial, take a seat. Now we're doing well as an industry. We're talking a lot about it. But is that 20% of the room? You can sit down, thank you. If you are looking for help hiring a Generation Z, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I would love to help you. In fact, we do staffing for drivers, permanent placements, and warehouse. I'd love to do it all. You can connect with me here. But then I also have some other resources for your kids. It's funny, he stumbled through my book name because my book's name is Well Shit. No, that's okay. It's well shit. Because that's kind of what they're feeling as they're graduating, right? Oh no. So that link takes you to the book. I would love if you guys would check it out. The TikTok takes you to my page that is all for your children, all for your employees. How do they communicate with you? How do they connect with you? How do they ask for vacation time? How do they dress when they go to an interview? Share that with the people that you know that you would love. But for all of you, I would love to connect. My whole thing is connecting. I love connecting people to jobs. I love connecting employers to candidates. I love connecting people to information that can help them make the best decisions that they can make for themselves. So I appreciate you taking some time. We have a couple minutes left for questions. Okay. Is there any questions? Anybody in the room who's like, not Gen Z, I just don't know how to do it? Yeah, absolutely.